Thank you so much for joining us for this special event presented by Fyli for International Women's Day. My name is Azia Celestino. I'm going to lead us in this conversation. We're meeting a lot of incredible female leaders who are empowering us through FinTech, GovTech, and the economy. So it's going to be a really dynamic conversation. So we can dive right in. I'm going to introduce us to our panel. We have Kim Prado. She is the Global Head of Client Banking and Digital Tech at RBC Capital Markets. Paola Santana, who is the founder of Social Glass, a lawyer and public policy expert. And we also have Ingrid Vanderveldt, Chairman and CEO of Empowering a Billion Women. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited for this conversation and truly a glimpse into the future and how it's female. So I want to go round robin and just have each of you give us an idea of your background and how you came to the current role that you're in, what you're doing in GovTech, FinTech, and also the economy, or like we like to call it, the Sheconomy. Just like a 1 or 2 minute introduction. Let's go ahead and start with Ingrid.
Well, hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. It is great to be here. Great to celebrate International Women's Day. I just love doing this, and I am so excited to be here with all the women that are on this panel. So first of all, thank you so much. So in terms of how I got here, I am a tech and finance entrepreneur, former business television host with CNBC, and really long story short, after having built a number of companies, some that did well, some that failed miserably, but having gone through the experiences like being told the first time I tried to raise money that I will never be able to raise money because I don't look like, act like, sound like, or talk like any of the CEOs that were being funded, that I wouldn't be able to find success as a venture funded CEO. And I know we all have these kinds of stories, but really after going through, a number of those instances, if you will, it became a personal mission for me to just really roll up my sleeves and focus on how do we make the path easier for women to start, grow, and scale ventures. So that's what led me into starting Empowering a Billion Women by 2020 when it first started. Now we're just EBW Global, which stands for Empowering a Billion Women. And I love that you mentioned the Sheconomy, because our major initiative at EBW is actually something called the Sheconomy Project, which we launched during this entire pandemic. And I'm sure we'll get into that, but I'll pause there.
So good. Let's move on to Kim.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me as well. It's truly an honor to celebrate International Women's Day with all of you incredible women out there. So how did I get here? Well, I started as a trader back in the 90s, and that led me towards like finding an interest in technology. And before I knew it, I was running a analytics team as a quant. And yeah, I was a female quant. They don't exist. They didn't exist in the 90s. And that led me to working at a startup where I was the third employee, building out, which is now the largest money broker in the world, called ICAP, which then led me to RBC, where I am today. And just wanted to point out that until 6 weeks ago, I was the only female managing director in technology. Can you believe that? Out of how many people in technology in a large bank? I was the only female managing director, and I just promoted the second one. Happy to report that. But my passion here is to drive change and bring innovation to the business, to the capital markets business in a way that's just unexpected. And, be able to really work with the fintechs and make it just so easy for people to do their jobs. But along the way, bring all the women along the way with me that are afraid to speak up and take risks and really, have a diverse table to work with.
I love that. Paola, how about you? Let's hear your background.
Thank you so much, Azia. So just like Ingrid and Kim, very alone on my niche to start. As you mentioned, I'm a lawyer, born and raised in the Dominican Republic, always very curious, always very focused and determined on creating massive positive change in the world. I thought initially that I was going to do that through being a politician or becoming an elected official. I worked at the elections court. I worked at the Constitutional Court back in my country. I won a Fulbright scholarship to figure out what was the future of government systems. I came to the United States 10 years ago to Washington, D.C., and I felt that the political world was too slow for the change that we had to create in the world for everyone. So I did like a step back and I was like, which system is really changing the world without asking questions, just changing the world dramatically. And I discovered technology. So I moved from East Coast to West Coast. I came to Silicon Valley. I started developing my first tech company, that is Matternet. If you've ever heard anything about drone delivery, that's my first company, where the drone delivery networks pioneers. We had to work with the White House, Congress, NASA to set up the first drones that could actually fly over people and over property, working with UPS, with airlines and whatnot. And many people think I was doing drones. I was not doing drones, I was doing public policy. I was building the thing, the infrastructure that governments were supposed to build for all of us. So fast forward 7 years later, I discovered myself at an intersection of, I need to go back to my first moonshot, my first passion, that is governance. And I need to apply all these exponential technologies that now I know how to build myself. I don't need to ask questions. I don't need to ask for someone to build them, because I'm in the tech world and I know how to build these things. So I'm just going to go and build all that infrastructure that our governments need to get to the next level. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm still based in Silicon Valley, and we build exponential technologies and artificial intelligence to basically transform government entities into high-performing organizations. And this is where I am. And my goal for women is, I have to say, is not to bring them. I think we're there. They're here. Like Kim said, she just promoted another person, but she should have been promoted years ago, right? So for me, it's more about giving people that are already in my table, give them the visibility, give them the titles, give them the salary, give them the exposure that we have the pleasure of having here, and that they also need, because they're already giving the extra mile and they're already putting a lot of work. So that's my mission, and I'm delighted to be sharing here to talk about how to advance everybody.
It is such a privilege to talk with all of you ladies, because I think especially during this time, during the pandemic, it's so easy for us to focus on how progress has been halted for women and how women are being disproportionately hit by this pandemic and the effects of the pandemic. And it gives me so much hope just to hear about all of your backgrounds and how accomplished you are during this time, and how we might be moving forward in more ways than one. But I want to start with Paola. So I read your bio. It's so interesting. You say you're creating the world's next political system after democracy. That sounds so impactful and incredible. What does it really mean?
Well, it means exactly that, in the sense that, so when you have the opportunity to think critically, you are not only doing things, you're not just improving systems, you're able to do what we call in Silicon Valley leapfrogs, when you just completely jump a couple of steps and go from 0 to 1 or from 1 to 100. So I think that when I've been studying and watching how governments operate internally. So with Social Glass, what we're doing is basically understanding not what government and politicians say they're going to do. We're actually observing what the action is. How did you actually spend the budget? How did you actually bought things through procurement? How did you actually hire someone? Or how did you actually face a pandemic? And that's the power of data. Data is something that is there, is very cold, but it means that someone took an action to get that data. And that someone is people working at government. So the question is, once we see the data of how government is operating, how they are optimizing whatever they're doing, where can we go? And with that insight of that data, what I'm trying to ask myself is, so governments are the biggest decision makers in the world. They are the biggest purchasers in the world. These guys and girls determine how we live and thrive, all of us, right? But at the same time, they don't operate with a sense of urgency, and they operate like if they're broke, if they don't have money, and they are the biggest investors in the world. So I'm just really urging myself to say, is it the way we allocate money? Is it the way we amass money? Is it the way we select our people to execute the government function? Is it the way we do elections? Is it the way we run the public stuff, whatever that is. I'm just saying, I'm done with improving layer by layer. I'm done with saying democracy 4.0. Let's choose someone one more year or one less year, or let's put a little bit more money. I'm done with that. I'm just saying, let's do a step back and figure out if democracy is even the thing. I do not care how the thing is named, just as I don't care if it's red or blue or this or that. I care the outcome, and the outcome is something that you feel because you see it on how people's quality improve. So I want systems that we, as Ingrid said, metric, 1 billion women. Can you measure that? You can. So I want systems that are measurable, that are high performing. And that's why I'm saying, as opposed to every time I talk about politics, people go straight to the politics topic. And I'm like, this is not about politics, it's about operation of governance. And I don't care how we get there, and I don't care what the name is, but I know it's not what we have today. So that's why I detach from democracy, and I say, we didn't know what FinTech was until it was a thing. We didn't know that is it important that women vote? Is it important to be labeled a feminist or not? The power in words are important. So what I'm saying is, I know it's better than democracy, but it might be totally different. And this is what we're trying to do with social glass, to really push the boundaries of how government systems that operate for everyone and that do not leave people behind, how are they called, how they operate, and how they really impact the world. So that's what we're doing, in a way to put it in a granular fashion, these big concepts that we're trying to crack here at Social Glass.
And I think so many people are aware of how governments work, especially during this time, right? Something else that I think people are aware of, and particularly women and everyday investors, is the rise of FinTech or technology being applied in the financial industry. So Kim, I want to pivot to you and talk about FinTech and what you think is fueling this rise, especially because as an anchor for Cheddar, it seems like almost every day we're talking about investing on apps like Robinhood and the frenzy behind Bitcoin. And I think people hear FinTech often, but they don't think about how it's actually applied in their everyday lives, specifically for women. So can you talk about that and how it's been growing for years and what you think might be behind that change?
Absolutely. So, if you think back 10 years ago, right? You either bought software or you built software, right? But you didn't really integrate software, right? You either built it or you bought it. And then all of a sudden, open source became a thing where you could now go on GitHub and download software that people already built for free, like the Google libraries or the Amazon libraries and so on. Then you had our competitors contributing software, so we're able to pull that in. And then you had the rise of all the FinTechs coming out of Silicon Valley and everywhere else, not just Silicon Valley, New York, massive amount of FinTechs coming out of New York. And so now you're living in a whole different world and a whole different approach to building software. So what we had to do is we had to pivot towards a capabilities approach to building tech. So think about it like this. If you go away and you go build something, it could take 6 months and it'll be wrong. Or you could buy a FinTech and integrate it and leapfrog the competition quickly. So I like to think about this whole approach that we're taking as asset light, similar to how Uber doesn't own cars, but rides show up at your house to take anywhere you want to go, or DoorDash just brings you food and they don't own the cars and the delivery people, right? It's the same concept. So where can we plug in FinTechs along the execution, the pricing, execution, risk, research chain to actually deliver capabilities to our traders and salespeople and bankers in a much faster time frame versus the old days when it would take forever. So let me give you a great example. One of the components that I own for the bank is the UI UX strategy, which is our look and feel, creating our customized client experience. So I had a choice. I could go off and build this thing and come up with an approach, or I could partner with a FinTech. So I partnered with a company called OpenFin. And what OpenFin did for me, they enabled me to deliver faster and cheaper in an environment that is moving faster than I can keep up, right? So by partnering with them, we were able to bring their toolkit in and create components that are being reused by the whole organization. In fact, going to metrics, I love the whole metrics thing. We have over 42 apps that have opted into this over 2 years, which is a lot on Wall Street. And about, I want to say there's like 6,000 plus users now of this, which doesn't sound like a lot in scale, but in a bank, that's a lot for us. And, really the key here is going back to the data. So being able to deliver with telemetry built in and being able to really monetize what we're putting on the desk. So I like to look at this in 3 steps. We have the data, so we're aggregating data from all over the world, all over the place, bringing it all together, layering intelligence on top, using AI, NLP, all the latest and greatest toolkits, and then delivering it up in this customized client experience or our, harmonized, way of accessing data. So we make it easy for our business to get at the information. So how does that relate to Uber? Well, because I'm not building it all. It's federated. I've got people all around the world building pieces of this that we're leveraging. So that's how we're doing it faster and cheaper. And if it weren't for the fintechs, we wouldn't be where we are.
So interesting. And I'm excited to talk more with you about that. I want to move to Ingrid because we touched on this just a little bit, the Sheconomy. What is the Sheconomy and where does it stand right now for women?
Yeah, so the Sheconomy is really the activation of women at scale in the economy in ways that we've never seen before. And so we started something called the Sheconomy Project here at EBW. And the Sheconomy Project is a bipartisan job creation initiative targeted at enterprise, both public and private, to essentially expand their supplier diversity dollars. Our goal with the Sheconomy Project is to actually leverage our platform to help essentially facilitate $1 billion in transactions between women and diverse-led businesses and the enterprises seeking to gain access to them. And as I'm sitting here listening, I'm like, I'm so excited for the listeners of this particular session because something really quite magical is happening as we're talking here. And as I'm listening to Paola and as I'm listening to Kim, it's like supplier diversity and governmental agencies, et cetera, for all of history, really. Part of why they have not been able to expand their spend with people who are like us, who are listening to us talk right now, women and diverse leaders, in part is because they haven't been able to find us, right? So they've not been able to find us because the data hasn't been out there. Women, frankly, we're at EBW, we're in the top 99.7% of businesses that have gone over 8 figures, like less than 1% of businesses ever do that. So I mention that because a lot of women in diverse-led business owners have not had the experience to scale. However, they are out there, right? But the data hasn't existed to really be able to find them. Where are you? What kind of business are you? How big are you? What is your experience out there? And everything that we're hearing Kim talk about too, where I'm like literally, I'm sitting here going, listeners, I hope that you're hearing this. This is the kind of stuff that when I was starting my career, I would have prayed to have access to this kind of information. And the access to that kind of information is unlike ever before. There are platforms now that open up opportunities for women and diverse leaders to actually scale their business. They can learn about finance through the kinds of things that Kim is doing and RBC is doing. They're able now to say, okay, governments and enterprise, there's going to be some accountability around the spend that is happening because there are companies like what Paula is doing that's tracking all of that. And it's like there literally is no better time than now for women and diverse leaders to actually start and scale their businesses. And the nice thing about that is, if you look at the stats with some media back in December of 2020, they say 100% of the job losses were actually all women. If you look at the job losses that have happened during the pandemic, the majority of them are women. Women are, prior to the pandemic happening, oftentimes what also held women and diverse leaders back, and we don't often talk about it because we frankly don't want people to know, We say it's lack of access to capital, and yes, that is part of it, but it's actually the confidence. The confidence gap is a real thing. What the pandemic has done, what COVID has done, what the complete decimation of the job market has done, but especially for women, is it's brought out all of these women, many of whom I would imagine are watching this now going, I have no other choice than to think about things from an entrepreneurial standpoint, to go and create opportunity for myself. And frankly, I don't care about confidence or what anybody thinks, because I'm trying to feed my kids. I'm trying to keep my family in order. I'm trying to, protect what we have here. And so where I'm just blown away by what's happening, this magical conversation, because it really does sort of boil down to this. And that is, again, there is no better time than now to be out in the marketplace, to find those opportunities, and to have those opportunities to be able to build your dream, build your idea. The tools, the leaders, we're all here who have gone through things just like many of the viewers have now. And you've got leaders that are sitting here saying, and now there are accountability measures. There are tools out there that are going to help you succeed. So just like, there's nothing to hold you back. We're here, we're excited, and the Sheconomy project and everything that's happening as we get through and on the other side of the pandemic. I mean, frankly, I think we are seeing a global transformation of our economy, and that frankly is the Sheconomy. And it's the Sheconomy that's going to help all of us get past the she-cession.
I am so inspired, and I have to say that's why I'm so passionate about Fyli in this community, because we bring together incredible women who are doing things in their silos, often, as all three of you have mentioned, on your own or close to on your own. And we're providing a lot of women with these resources to scale their businesses or to just gain confidence that they deserve to have. I have so many questions for you guys, so I'm going to try to nail it down and get the most for our viewers. I want to ask all of you, and try to keep your answers really concise, because I know we just have a few minutes left and I have a lot to say. So how is your work right now and your leadership creating a better world for women in business, but also for everyday women? It's International Women's Day. So for those out there who maybe aren't as focused on business or are balancing a lot of different priorities in their life right now, how would you say you're impacting the world for everyday women?
I'm going to start very quickly because I just want to piggyback over what Ingrid was talking about. So Ingrid, this is amazing what you're doing. And the most important thing is we can empower all these women and push them and tell them like, yeah, let's do that. And then we have Kim on this side, like working with all this FinTech, but we need more infrastructure to support all that courage and all that willingness and all that passion. So what we are doing, our first product at Social Glass, is doing exactly that. We are connecting every small business, every local business, every Black owned, women owned, minority owned, disadvantaged business with their local governments first. So governments, every local government in the United States, almost every, has a mandate to spend locally a bunch of money. And they do that manually. They do 3 calls on the phone. And if someone doesn't pick up, because these businesses do not have a 24/7 hotline, do not have a way to send an invoice, do not have a way to send a quote, do not have a government sales department. When you don't have the infrastructure as a woman or as a, any minority business, you cannot respond to 90,000 government units asking for things every day. But the need is there and the money is there. So we have created this platform where any woman can come and start selling their products or their services with 3 clicks. If you don't have a logo, we help you with your logo. If you don't have pictures of your product, we come up with the pictures for your products. And we even help you price these items right. Because we know that every government agency, we know what their limits are. So if you price something right, you might not even have to get a contract. You can just get a direct purchase from government. We're doing that with tech. You don't have to talk with someone on the phone or to get consulting advice. We just hook you up and we send quotes on behalf of you 24/7. So we are already doing that for government. Why for government? Because government is the biggest purchaser in the world. And why with small businesses, Paola? let me help small businesses. It's not help. It's because small businesses are the backbone of our country's economies. It just makes total sense. And I'm gonna go even further. You know who are the decision makers in government making most purchases? Women. You know why? Because we're the admins, we're the operators, we're the people with government credit cards that when a procurement guy decides that something needs to be purchased, the one doing the purchase is almost always a woman. So women, we have a lot of agency to spend taxpayers' money, but we just think it's not us. So that's the way I'm empowering women on a business level. And then on a one-to-one level, I'm championing a lot of women, Black women, Latino women coming to Silicon Valley and launching their first ventures ever, working at NASA, working on many other startups that are negotiating their first salary ever. Like I try to boost that up so the ones that come after them, they're not a ceiling for those other women, because I've been that. So I'm advising them on, moonshot strategies, positioning, competition, salary negotiation. I connect them with my coach, with my business coach. Sometimes, you just don't know how to deal with stuff. And I'm like, you need help because you need to step up. So that's what I'm doing on my day to day. And any woman that, thinks that they're in the tech sector that I can help, they can just reach out to me on Instagram, and I'm very accessible. And I'm always posting like tips and things that I'm learning while I fundraise or while I talk with other women like yourselves.
I love that. Kim, how about you? How is your work impacting everyday women right now?
Yeah, so just had, going through this and understanding all the roadblocks the women face, especially on Wall Street. I'm a mentor. I participate in teaching girls to code, back in in high school, to try to encourage more women in the tech sector to come up through STEM and, want to be a computer science major. And then, just day to day, I'm constantly working with, women in technology, our Women Foundation, et cetera, and on and on. And so, anything I can do to help women, take risk and not be afraid to speak up and understand how to drive their career, I'm always there for them. So that's what I do.
And on the financial literacy side, I'm sure just everything that you're doing in FinTech is also helpful for women who are entering the market in that way. I want to move on to Ingrid. Ingrid, how is your work empowering women? We talk about 1 billion women, but how is it empowering everyday women?
Yeah, well, I love when people ask me the question too. They're like, how are you towards your billion? And if you add all the numbers together in terms of the impact, it's over 700 million just through direct and indirect across the globe. Thank God for, opportunities like this that allow us to do that. But the way that we help women is actually in 3 ways. Our secret sauce is, again, helping scale and connect those opportunities, a lot of what Paula is talking about. But the first way is that we help connect women to enterprise level contracts. So and sizable contracts. So we like to focus on $1 million plus contracts. And so, that's what our focus is on the enterprise side. The second thing that we do in terms of how do we actually empower everyday women like ourselves when we were just starting out, or women who might be starting out, or women who are solopreneurs, if you will, we do a couple of things. So one, we have free education at EBW. So we teach women all the things that I wish somebody would have taught me. We provide mentorship. We have a community. We have an accelerator program. And so we've got a number, basically we meet women where they're at and provide education and reskilling to get back into the workforce and or start, grow, and scale their venture. The third thing that we do is actually around financing and operational support of businesses. So for example, this year during the pandemic, frankly, after the George Floyd incident that happened last spring, our team is 85% women, a very diverse team. And I got together with our Black leaders and I said, what can we do? And what came back was, how do we find Black women in some of the hardest hit communities out there and support them? And so we went on a robust recruiting campaign. We found those influential, promising women in those communities, and we basically funded them and took them through an accelerator program in 34 cities that we now support as a business at EBW. And so in that, you know, those women are back to, we've heard it a few times, just the backbone of what's really going to get our economy, our families, our communities back on track. So those are the three ways that we primarily do that.
Now, each of you have expressed in some sense that there can be more women at the table where you are right now. I want to hear from you about how you have learned to advocate for yourself. And we're talking about self-promotion. We talked about the confidence gap. How do you muster up the confidence? What are some of the things that you've learned about negotiating on behalf of yourself that you wish you knew when you were first starting out? Let's start with Paola.
So, yeah, I don't negotiate my position on any table anymore. It's not a topic. It's not an option. Like, you know, when I bring the business, I bring the business, I bring the knowledge, I bring the hard work. The only thing you need to bring is the money. Like, there's nothing to negotiate on that end. So, and I do that for the women that work with me as well. So they get their titles. Like sometimes they even talk. So language is very important. They talk like, well, I help on these, or I work on this. And I'm like, no, you lead these. You're the chief of these. I give them the title. And it takes months for them to say, I'm the chief of these. I'm like, you are the chief of these. We're a startup, but you're the chief of these. And when we grow, you will be the chief of these. So, and now we talk in that language, we talk in that way. And I know it's taken me 10 years to do that, right? So I'm trying to impose that language on other women that might not feel that they're there yet. No, we say in Silicon Valley, if you wait until you're ready, you're never gonna do it. So positive language is important. I think that also is very important, especially for women in tech that are fundraising or that have startups, is to always negotiate in every level. Like you might have a conversation with an investor and they're like, well, I'm not ready to invest now. And you're like, okay, then make an intro. Well, I don't invest, 1 million plus. And you're like, no, but you can invest you can be my first check. What's the ticket size you can give? Like you always need to get something, right? Because you're already investing an hour of your time talking with someone that accepted a meeting with you. So we cannot just be educating the world out there about the things we build and putting every ounce of energy and not getting something back. So when I meet with investors, I either get the money I want, or I get a connection to another investor, or I get an intro to an advisor, or I get an intro to a high profile government officer. I always live with something, and in some cases is the knowledge. I would ask them, how would you go about this? How did you end up funding some business that initially you were risk averse? So I always try to get something out of the meetings that I have. And lastly, I would say perspective. Perspective is about, you do the work. If you do the work, do you deserve the recognition? You do. So it's not about favors. It's not about feeling like an imposter, because you can feel as an imposter if you haven't done the work. But if you have done the work, then you totally deserve it. So I dismiss with the women I work all these feelings of I'm not there, I don't have it, I need more of, I need less of, I need to be less loud, I need to be less this with. Have you put the work? Have you done the work? Have you put the hours? Have you done the homework? Okay, then you totally deserve this. And this sense of deserving is so deep, and because it comes from you, you don't need other people's approval. So it totally detaches the applause from the actual work and the actual worth and value of the things that we create. And I think that for women, that's very important. I think women are very resilient. They're also very hardworking, but because we're used to be behind stage, we cannot take praise. And because we cannot take praise, sometimes we don't even believe it ourselves. So I work on that too, with myself, with other women that I work with. And every time I have an opportunity to tell a woman, oh my God, that is amazing, I try to do it to reinforce how valuable we are in the society and how much money we're bringing to all these tables all the time.
Paola, I think for everyone watching, we should know 2021, 2022, we're not doing anything for free anymore, ladies, making sure you are getting some sort of worth or value out of what you're putting out. I think that is so important. Kim, I also want to hear from you. What are some things that you've learned that help you to show up for yourself and also negotiate on behalf of yourself?
First of all, Paola, I completely agree with everything you said. I've got a grin ear to ear. And just to add on to that, yeah, you know what? I agree. If you've done the work, you better take credit for it. But sometimes it's hard to just stand up and say, you know, I did that or whatever. So I encourage the women around me to speak up, take risk, and really own it and own their career. And it's really important that they take time for themselves to understand what they want to do and then be able to articulate it. So for example, nobody's going to go and say, oh, I deserve a raise, right? You have to go in there and say to your manager, I did these 5 things. The market value is this. I'd like to get paid that. You have to go in and ask for the order. If you don't ask for the order, you're never going to get it. So I encourage people to speak up. Don't be afraid to, don't think that, oh, I'm being too loud or whatever. You just know, you just have to speak up and say, I want that. And if you don't, and you know what, you may not get it. And if you get knocked down, get back up. Don't go home and cry, get back up and ask again tomorrow, because eventually you're going to get it. And I can tell you, being the only woman sitting around a table with my male peers, it is not easy to speak up and say, I want something, but when I want it, like Paolo, I'm not giving in till I get it. So you got to speak up and ask for it.
I love that. It's not a no, it's just a no right now.
Exactly.
Let's end on a high note with Ingrid. Ingrid, some lessons that you've learned in advocating for yourself and negotiating.
Oh my gosh. Well, again, we're just in a magical conversation here, because I think you're just hearing, we're all reiterating one another. And so I would say a couple things here. And one is the moment that I decided that as I go into meetings and I don't make it about me, and I truly make it about what are we trying to accomplish. And then everything you've heard here, you've got to ask for it. You've done the work. You stay focused on the results. That actually was the click that went off in my mind, that I was like, okay. And I started landing bigger deals, and I started landing them faster. The second thing I learned was something that I teach it now, and it's called the deal maker mindset. And what the deal maker mindset basically boils down to is, it's kind of like when I became the first entrepreneur in residence at Dell Technologies. So I was overseeing entrepreneurship initiatives globally for the business, and I had never had a corporate job. I had always been an entrepreneur and a CEO for my own businesses. So overnight, I become this Fortune 50 executive, if you will, with all of this responsibility. It was tremendous. It gave me the training wheels of the work that we now do today at scale. But key to that was this, and again, that was the deal maker mindset. When you're dealing with a guy like Michael Dell, or people who are operating at this level, people who are doing really big things in the world, they don't care if you're black, white, red, yellow, man, woman, whatever, they don't care. What they care about is the first point, which is, what are your ideas? Can you execute? And can you drive the results? So the more that you really stay focused on that and come at it from the perspective of, how is what I do going to solve an issue for the person that I'm talking to, keep it focused there. That's where, again, the click in the room happens, where all of a sudden you start getting your deals done. And again, you're going to get them done bigger, and you're going to get them done faster. And then all you got to do is make sure you continue to deliver with excellence. And one thing I'll say there, knowing mistakes will always happen at times. So for women that are listening to this, what if I make a mistake? Mistakes happen all the time. Address them immediately. Figure out how you're going to solve them. Be very transparent and continue to move forward. As you just heard from Kim, persevere and keep pushing, because you will get the job done.
Keep growing, keep moving, and execute is the name of the game. Ladies, I seriously wish we had like a whole day to talk. I know we could glean so much knowledge from you all. Thank you so much for joining this panel. Really, really appreciate it.